Welcome back. Health officials in Colorado confirmed that an adult has died from Hantavirus as authorities across the country continue monitoring dozens of people linked to the deadly cruise ship outbreak. Officials say the Colorado case does not appear to be connected to the ship, but with 41 people now being monitored in the U.S., concerns are growing about the rare virus. Going to bring in our panel now, internist at Custom Care Medical, Dr. Frank Contessessa, along with former co-director of the Children's Obesity Program at Children's National Hospital, surgeon and founder of ProCare Consultants, Dr. Evan Nadler. Doctors, great to be with you both. Thank you both so much for coming on the show. Dr. Nadler, I want to start with you. You know, many Americans are hearing about this hantavirus, and many of them immediately think about COVID. But can you talk to us about the differences between these two, and should we be concerned?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for people to remember is that COVID was a really contagious virus and lingered in the air for a period of time after people even left the room. So the person-to-person spread was significant, as we all know. The hantavirus and this Andes strain. So hantavirus in general is not human-to-human transmitted. The hantavirus has some reported cases, and there have been from the cruise ship, but it's much harder to transfer from a person to a person. So in general, I would say no, we don't really need to think about this virus in the same way as we do COVID. However, obviously the Ebola virus that's in the Congo right now is a different story, and that's another highly contagious virus that we need to perhaps focus more on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I was going next. There are also, global health concerns, this morning over the deadly Ebola virus. The outbreak in Central Africa. And the World Health Organization says now more than 130 people are believed to be dead. And we are hearing reports of an American missionary who's over there is confirmed to be positive with Ebola. So, Dr. Contessetta, what is the real situation on the ground right now? What do you know? And how concerned should we be here in the United States?
Well, Tracy, great to be here. Let's start with the last part of that question. I'm not terribly concerned about this turning into a global pandemic that we have to be terribly concerned about. There have been several dozen outbreaks of Ebola in Africa over the last 20 years. They're usually self-limited. They're contained. There's a little bit more concern with this one because this one's happening in some urban areas where the spread is a little bit easier. And it's the rarer strain that does not have a vaccine or really effective treatments that we know of. So there is some concern here, but I think the efforts that are being made to contain this should be effective, and I think they will be. We should be looking at travel restrictions, which we are, but Ebola does not spread like COVID or any respiratory illness, so we do not see person to person through the air. So it's close contacts. It's the healthcare workers. They're exposed to bodily fluids and that sort of a thing. So we should not see the kind of spread. And there isn't asymptomatic spread that you saw with COVID. So people could be walking around infected with COVID, spread it to 100 different people without them realizing it. That doesn't happen with Ebola. If you're not sick, you're typically not contagious. So we should really take a deep breath and not get too worried about this.
Yeah, that's really good to know. I want to pivot now to this. The president announced a major expansion of TrumpRx.gov, adding more than 600 generic medications, which are really aimed at lowering drug costs for Americans, for families that are really struggling with high prescription prices. A lot of folks struggle with them. Dr. Nadler, how does this change things for them?
I think what people need to understand about TrumpRx, and frankly, it's the same thing with GoodRx, is that it's more of a clearinghouse than a pharmacy, than an online pharmacy. So most people, most Americans, will actually still find their prices for their medications to be cheapest if they go through their insurance company and get it from a pharmacy where insurance is accepted. TrumpRx is best for people who are either cash paying for their medications or if they have high deductibles where their hit on their wallet would be significant to buy their medications no matter what pathway they use. So it helped for sure to have more competitive drug pricing out there. And the way TrumpRx works is it basically points you to Mark Cuban's GoodRx and Cost Drugs or he has another site, or to the Amazon pharmacy, cost plus drugs. So it helps, and these are for generics, which are also less expensive than some of the name brand medications. But in general, most people will still benefit from going through their insurance companies.
Yeah, and of course, when people are able to get their prescriptions, they're healthier, right? It keeps down their overall health care costs. Something else I'm going to talk about, speaking of being healthier, there is something that Americans are doing, part of the MAHA movement. They're sort of going back to the old school foods. I remember my grandmother making this liver and onions and other organ meats like kidneys and heart, even simple foods like onions are being praised for their nutrients. Dr. Frank, talk to us a little bit more about this. I mean, are you seeing more of this? And is this really helping us out when it comes to our health?
I think there's a potential for it, Tracy. Most people today eat no more than like 3 or 4 species of plants. They might eat some chicken or some fish. Our diets have become very narrow because of industrial food, processed food. So getting back to the way we used to eat, I think makes a lot of sense. I've seen on Instagram people marketing these supplements made with organ meats. I think it's not a terrible idea. You can even look at eggs are coming back because, it's not just about getting protein. There's choline, there's B complexes, in things like eggs. So I think the whole MAHA movement as a whole has been fantastic to open up the conversation to say what we've been doing for the past 50 to 60 years is wrong. We've never been sicker. This country has chronic illness. That's the pandemic we should be talking about, is chronic illness. So varying our diets and getting back to the way we used to eat, and that we were designed to eat, I think is a great movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I let you go, Dr. Nadler, I want to talk about some really exciting things when it comes to pancreatic cancer. There is a new experimental pill showing real promise in early trials. Researchers saying that it could reshape how the deadly cancer is treated. What more can you tell us about this, and how encouraging is it in the fight against cancer?
Any new development for anti-cancer treatment is hopeful and exciting. But I would caution people to understand how these trials sort of work. And early results with almost any drug do not necessarily predict the long-term results, or when the results get into the general public, or even after FDA approval, or even getting to FDA approval. So, yes, the advances in the science with checkpoint inhibitors and some of the other new targets are exciting, and we should all be supporting the research funding that enables these types of developments to occur. But in terms of what it really means for pancreatic cancer, it's really hard to know at this point.
Okay, well, Dr. Nadler, Dr. Contessa, great to be with you both. Thank you both so much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.